Welcome to Midnight Pages, a quiet place where timeless literature gently guides you into restful sleep at the close of your day. Tonight, we invite you into the mysterious and haunting world of The Lifted Veil, a deeply introspective and visionary tale by George Eliot. Is the gift to see clearly into the minds and hearts of others truly a blessing? Or is it, perhaps, a curse? This is the story of Latimer, a man burdened with the tragic ability to peer beyond the veil of illusion and witness the hidden truths others cannot see. What initially appears to be a remarkable gift slowly becomes an unbearable weight, isolating him in a world of relentless insight, loneliness, and disillusionment. Even life's most beautiful moments gradually lose their charm when faced with naked reality. The Lifted Veil is not merely a tale about supernatural powers. It is rather an intimate exploration of the hidden truths within us all, the secret fears, hidden desires, and the profound solitude of the human condition. Now, dim the lights. Find a calm and comfortable space and let Midnight Pages carry you gently away to a distant place where the veil slowly lifts and truth softly reveals itself. Part 1. The Foreseen Fate. From a young age, Latimer knew he was different. He could perceive things others could not, hear whispers that remained inaudible to everyone else, and sense emotions hidden deep beneath smiling faces. At first, he believed these heightened senses were merely signs of an overly sensitive nature. However, as he grew older, he came to realize they were far more profound, an extraordinary ability to see clearly into the thoughts and feelings of those around him, even catching glimpses of the future. This ability felt more like a curse than a blessing. He saw through the deceit behind smiles, the envy masked by friendship, and the hypocrisy cloaked in familial affection. Seeing too much, too soon isolated him from others, erecting an invisible wall between himself and the world. Behind this transparent barrier, Latimer lived a solitary existence, profoundly lonely, the burden of his insight deepening with every passing year. Everything changed one day when he met Bertha Grant, his older brother Alfred's fiancée. From the moment he laid eyes on her, Latimer was struck by an unfamiliar, powerful sensation. Unlike everyone else, Bertha's mind was entirely closed to him, shrouded behind an impenetrable veil. For the first time, Latimer encountered someone whose emotions and thoughts were completely hidden from him, rendering her utterly mysterious and irresistibly fascinating. For Latimer, Bertha represented the perfect enigma he had longed for. While the transparency of others bored and exhausted him, Bertha's concealed heart captivated him entirely. Every glance, every subtle gesture stirred in him an overwhelming, intoxicating emotion, a strange, exhilarating feeling he had never known before. But one night, Latimer received a chilling premonition. In a vivid, unmistakable dream, he saw clearly into the future. He was married to Bertha, living together in a home devoid of love, filled instead with mutual hatred and bitterness. He saw her piercing eyes and cold expression, felt vividly the palpable tension and simmering resentment between them. The vision was disturbingly clear, unbearably real. He woke abruptly, drenched in cold sweat and trembling uncontrollably, gasping for breath. Yet strangely, even as dread gripped him, an inexplicable force compelled him toward this terrifying destiny rather than away from it. Though aware of the inevitable disaster awaiting him, Latimer felt an irresistible urge to pursue it. Why was he drawn to the very destruction he feared? This bewildering question swirled relentlessly within him, an obsession forming around the tragedy itself. Latimer instinctively knew he could not escape the path he had glimpsed. Slowly, but surely, he began moving toward the catastrophe he foresaw. Unconsciously, he had already chosen this irreversible course. Knowing the future did not grant him the power to change it. Perhaps this inexorable pull toward ruin was the true nature of his cursed foresight. He wondered intensely what this mysterious force was that drew him forward, unaware yet of the painful truth that he was driven not by reality, but by an illusion crafted from his own desires and imagination. This illusion would soon lead him into tragedy. Part 2. Beyond the Veil. Why her? Why is she the only one I can't see through? Latimer would ask himself this question in the quiet hours of the night, staring at the ceiling while the world around him slept. His entire life had been governed by an unwanted clarity, the intrusive transparency of others' minds. But Bertha was silence. She was mystery. She was, maddeningly, free from his vision. And that was why he could not let her go. Bertha's every glance, every smile, seemed calculated yet unreadable. Latimer clung to each word she spoke, hoping to hear a crack in her guarded composure. But she remained inscrutable. The more he failed to understand her, the more deeply he fell into her gravity. He told himself it was love, but deep down, it felt more like obsession, the desperate craving to possess what he could not comprehend.
Is this love, or is it hunger for the unknown?
He whispered to himself, watching her from across the drawing room as she sipped her tea, as if the answer might be curled in the steam. His mind spun with images of their future, visions he had not willed but could not escape. The two of them, side by side, yet emotionally oceans apart. Her gaze, once mysterious, now icy. Her voice, once alluring, now laced with disdain. The future had already shown him the ending, a life steeped in resentment, isolation, and unspoken contempt. And yet, the more vivid the nightmare, the more determined he became.
I must be mad,
Latimer confessed in his journal,
to walk knowingly into a future I dread and still call it fate.
His thoughts twisted further in upon themselves. Perhaps he was not in love with Bertha at all. Perhaps he loved only the veil, the mystery, the blindness, the silence she wrapped around herself. For the first time, he had tasted what it was to not know, and it had made him feel alive. But that kind of hunger is never satisfied, and the veil that shields mystery also conceals danger. He could feel it now, an unease beneath her calm exterior, like a serpent coiled behind a curtain. He did not know what lay beneath, and that made her all the more irresistible. He would not turn away. He could not. Even if the future was carved in pain, even if the veil, once lifted, would destroy them both. Part 3. Fatal Allure. Marrying Bertha felt less like a choice and more like fate. Latimer had already seen the end. He had witnessed the downfall, felt the weight of its inevitability, and yet he chose her. Or perhaps it would be truer to say he was drawn to her. Bertha wasn't merely a woman to him. She was an unknowable presence, and that, more than anything, was what held him captive. In the beginning, everything was quiet. Bertha was polite, composed, and, at least on the surface, a dutiful wife. But her eyes always seemed to gaze into some unreachable distance. Her words carried a faint but persistent tone of detachment. Latimer tried to understand her, to reach beyond that veil with his gift, but her soul remained a closed door. She was still wrapped in silence.
"Do you love me?"
He asked her one evening, carefully, almost pleadingly. Bertha looked at him for a moment and offered a faint smile.
Are you really someone who wants to know the answer to that, Latimer?
That smile, it wasn't warm. It was cool, edged with something like mockery. In that moment, Latimer felt a profound sense of isolation. He loved her, he was certain of that, and yet he feared her. He longed for her sincerity, but also dreaded the possibility that knowing her true feelings would shatter him completely. As days passed, the distance between them widened. Latimer grew increasingly obsessed with decoding her every movement, every word, every silence. But the more he searched for meaning, the more he found doubt and fear. Bertha, in turn, withdrew further into herself, and at times seemed to flinch under his gaze. Within that growing silence, Latimer slowly began to unravel. Who am I living with? The question echoed endlessly in his mind. The woman by his side was no longer the mysterious muse he had once adored, but a stranger cloaked in the mask his imagination had fashioned. He realized then that he had never truly loved Bertha. He had loved the incomprehensibility of her. And now, he was paying the price for it. One night he found himself sitting by their bed, tears silently slipping down his cheeks. He had seen this ending before. He had known this sorrow was waiting for him. And still, he walked into it. And yet, this ending was only a beginning. The true catastrophe had only just begun to show its face. Part 4. The Shadow of Ruin. Living with Bertha was like walking across a sheet of thin ice. Everything appeared calm and still on the surface, but just beneath lingered the constant threat of collapse. Every morning, Latimer would look at her face, quietly swallowing questions he could not bear to voice. Bertha remained elegant, composed, and, at least in public, the image of a dutiful wife. But Latimer could feel it. Her warmth was rehearsed, her presence a performance. Everything about her felt like a carefully constructed illusion, a play performed for someone she no longer cared for. He watched her obsessively. A glance, a pause, the slightest tremor in her voice. He searched them all for meaning. But still, he found nothing. Her veil had grown thicker with time, more impenetrable. What had once been alluring mystery had now become a suffocating enigma. Then one day, Latimer discovered a small bottle hidden in Bertha's drawer, its label faded, the liquid inside strange and unfamiliar. He said nothing. He couldn't. But from that moment on, suspicion burrowed into him like a worm under skin.
"Is she trying to poison me?"
The question echoed relentlessly in his mind. He sniffed his drinks before sipping, hesitated over every meal she prepared, and slowly withdrew into silence. Bertha said nothing, but she watched him. Her eyes no longer held surprise, nor fear. Instead, there was something colder, something eerily composed, as if she had been waiting for him to finally understand.
Why are you looking at me like that, Latimer?
She asked one evening, her voice soft but razor-edged.
If you have something to ask, you should speak. Silence won't protect you.
Her tone was quiet, but her eyes were hard as ice. Latimer couldn't respond. He already knew the answer. She no longer loved him. Perhaps she never had. There was no affection left between them, no hope for healing. Only a heavy, bitter hatred lingered in its place. Inside, Latimer was disintegrating. Every glance from her stirred fear and revulsion. He was horrified by what she had become, or perhaps by what he had refused to see all along. He had foreseen this future. He had known it would come. And still, he had chosen it. Now, he was drowning in the very vision he had once dismissed as only a dream. At last, he understood. What lay beyond the veil was not romance, not beauty, but cold calculation and indifferent cruelty. Bertha had never been the ideal he had projected onto her, and he had not loved her. He had loved the illusion, the desire, not the woman. The love he clung to had been a weapon forged against himself. It was not Bertha who destroyed him. It was his own blind hunger, the relentless need to possess the unknowable. He had seen everything, and still he walked willingly into ruin. Now he was paying the price, completely, painfully, and alone. Night brought no more visions. There were no glimpses of what lay ahead. Only the past stood before him, blindingly clear. And the present? It was here, cold and quiet, in the very heart of the despair he had always feared. Every night, Latimer asked himself the same question.
Why did I choose this path?
And every night he failed to answer it. Because the answer had already been given long ago. On the day he first looked at Bertha and saw nothing beyond her veil. The day he mistook silence for mystery and made it his fate. Part 5. After the Veil Lifts. At the far edge of despair, Latimer was visited by an old friend, Maynor, a physician turned experimental scientist. He came with a strange and troubling proposal. He wished to temporarily revive the brain of the recently dead in an attempt to capture their last thoughts. All he needed, he said, was a body. At first, Latimer refused, but fate intervened. Only a few days later, one of the household servants, a young man, was struck by a sudden and violent fever. By nightfall, he was dead. Maynor insisted this was the perfect subject for his experiment. Latimer, hollowed by grief and desperation, gave in. Perhaps, he thought, some hidden truth might yet be uncovered. Some final shift in the crumbling world around him. The experiment took place a few days later in Megnor's shadowy laboratory. The servant's body lay still on a cold metal table, surrounded by wires and humming machines. Silence pressed down on the room as the switch was thrown, and the current surged through the corpse. Then, a tremor. The eyelids fluttered, and slowly, shakily, the lips moved.
She killed me.
The words cracked through the air like thunder. Latimer stopped breathing. He did not need a name. He already knew. Bertha. The truth that had danced just beyond his reach for so long now stood before him, naked and indisputable, not whispered, not inferred, but spoken aloud from beyond the grave. Bertha had killed, and perhaps she would kill again. After that night, Latimer began to wither. His body weakened. His thoughts became scattered, blurred. He could no longer hear the thoughts of others. There were no more glimpses of the future. His ability, once a burden, now a loss, had disappeared completely. The veil had been lifted. The truth had come. And it was unbearable. One evening, racked with dizziness and pain, Latimer collapsed onto his bed. He knew he would not rise again. Outside, the wind whispered through the leaves. Inside, the silence was almost tender. Then, a soft sound. The door creaked open. He could not turn his head, but he felt the presence immediately. Bertha. She walked quietly toward him, lifted the teacup from his bedside table with a steady hand. Her face was calm. Her fingers did not tremble. He recognized the scent of the liquid inside. It was familiar, and not in a comforting way. He had once suspected its purpose. She raised the cup to his lips, smiled faintly, and whispered,
You've seen the truth now, Latimer. It's time to rest.
His final image was of her eyes, void of fear, absent of anger. There was only indifference, a vast, chilling emptiness. He did not resist. Perhaps he had been waiting for this moment. Perhaps it had begun long ago. Latimer slowly closed his eyes. His heartbeat faded. His breath ceased. In the stillness, he dissolved into nothing. Later, in the final pages of his journal, the last words were found.
I saw everything, but I changed nothing. The veil was lifted, and the truth did not save me. It ended me.
That is how his story ended. Or perhaps it had ended long before. The truth does not always set us free. Some truths are meant to remain buried, silent beneath the veil. Closing. Thank you for joining us tonight on Midnight Pages. As we close the final chapter of The Lifted Veil, we are not merely leaving a novel behind. We are parting with a lingering sense of wonder and a handful of haunting questions. When this story was published in 1859, British society was swept up in the excitement surrounding the release of Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species. It was a time when science began to take the place of God, and people began to believe even the human mind could be dissected and understood through scientific means. George Eliot quietly, yet piercingly, posed a question to that spirit of the age. Do we really need to know everything? Will uncovering the mysteries of the heart truly make us happier? Today, we live in an age of big data and artificial intelligence, a time when our preferences, feelings, and behaviors are not just observed, but predicted. In a way, Latimer's uncanny ability is no longer fiction. We live in a world where such powers have become real. But has it made us happier? We are more connected than ever, yet understand each other less. We are flooded with information, yet wisdom seems increasingly rare. We are lonelier. We are more uncertain. George Eliot foresaw this uncomfortable truth over 160 years ago. The Lifted Veil is not merely speculative fiction. It is a quiet prophecy, an exploration of the limits of human understanding and the tragedy that unfolds when we seek too desperately to know everything. Why was Latimer so drawn to Bertha? And why, knowing the ruin that awaited him, did he still embrace his own end? We leave you tonight with those questions resting gently on your heart. Thank you, as always, for being with us. Here at Midnight Pages, the story continues, even after the final sentence fades.